My stepfather drove me to a truck stop and never looked back. He left me with $20 and 8 words. "You're just a burden now. Good luck, kid." I am Maya. I was 16 when my life crumbled. My mom had died 6 months earlier, breast cancer, that moved too fast for anyone to process my stepfather. Dan had always tolerated me at best, but with Mom gone, the pretending stopped. I'd been staying out late picking fights at school. My grades collapsed. I was grieving, but he called it rebellion. Said I was ungrateful. Said I was costing him money. He didn't have any more. One Tuesday morning, he told me to pack a bag. Said we were going to visit my aunt in Nevada. I knew something was off. My aunt hadn't spoken to us in years, but I was too numb to question it. We drove for hours in silence. Radio off windows, up just the sound of tires on asphalt, and the occasional sigh when he pulled into the Flying J truck stop. I thought we were just getting gas. Maybe some food. "Wait here," he said, walking inside. When he came back, he had a coffee and an envelope. He handed me. The envelope, $20 inside, and my birth certificate. "Your mom's gone," he said, not looking at me. "And I never signed adoption papers. You're not legally mine, and I can't do this anymore." I stared at him confused, still not understanding. Do what? The car was still running. He took a sip of his coffee. "Raise someone else's kid. You're 16, old enough to figure it out." He got back in the car. I stood there frozen, backpack over one, shoulder watching as he pulled away. No goodbye, no explanation. Just brake lights disappearing around the corner. I sat on the curb for hours waiting, thinking maybe he'd come back. Maybe this was some twisted lesson, a punishment that would end when I learned whatever I was supposed to learn. Night fell, the temperature dropped. I had nowhere to go. No phone, they'd taken it away last month after I missed curfew again. No friends close enough to call. Even if I could, I was 3 states away from anyone who knew my name. The truck stop buzzed with activity travelers filling up truckers, eating dinner families stretching their legs. No one noticed the girl with the backpack. No one except Rose. She found me curled up behind the dumpster next to the small truck stop diner, eyes red from crying. Stomach twisted with hunger, she didn't say much, just, "You can't sleep here, honey bears come for the trash." Rose was in her 60s. Short gray hair, pulled tight against her scalp hands, mapped with burn scars from decades of cooking. She wore the same blue uniform as the other diner waitresses, but somehow carried it differently, like armor, not a costume. She didn't ask why I was there, didn't demand explanations, just nodded toward the back door of the diner. "I need someone to wash dishes, third one, quit this month." That's how it started. Not with kindness, not with charity, but with dishes stacked higher than my head water. So hot, it turned my hands pink grease so thick it took 3 scrubbings to remove. I worked until 2 a.m. that first night, then followed Rose to her small apartment above the diner. She pointed to a pull-out couch already made up with sheets that smelled like lavender and said, "Bathrooms down the hall, don't use all the hot water." No questions, no lectures, just a space to exist. Cried that first night, silently face pressed into the pillow, lungs aching. Not because I missed home, but because I realized I'd never had one. Not really. I don't know if Rose heard me. She never mentioned it. But the next morning there was a toothbrush still in its package sitting on the bathroom sink. New, not expensive, but mine. The first thing someone had given me without expecting something in return. The diner sat at the edge of a small town in Montana. Population 3,400. Mostly ranch families, truckers passing through, and tourists heading to Yellowstone in the summer. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone except me. I was the girl who appeared overnight, the one with no history, no connections, the one who kept her head down and stayed quiet. I learned quickly how to be invisible, how to move without disturbing the air, how to watch without being seen. Rose didn't ask about my past. For the first month, we existed in comfortable silence. She'd leave coffee on the counter before I woke up. I'd make sure her dinner was warm when she came home late. It wasn't family. It wasn't even friendship yet. But it was something steady. Something I could hold on to. A few weeks in. I was organizing. Supplies in the storage room. When I found an old laptop buried under receipts and employee handbooks. The screen was cracked. The battery barely held a charge. But when I asked Rose about it, she just shrugged. Been meaning to throw that out things. Ancient. That night, I plugged it in and waited heart-pounding as the screen flickered to life. I hadn't used a computer in months, hadn't had access to anything beyond the small TV in Rose's living room, with its 5 fuzzy channels I connected to the diner's Wi-Fi and disappeared into a world bigger than the 4 walls around me. I found free online classes, tutorials, forums about everything from coding to business management. I devoured them, staying up until my eyes burned reading about financial literacy, watching videos on entrepreneurship, taking notes on paper napkins I'd brought home from the diner. I wasn't just passing time. I was building something, a ladder out of words and knowledge, a way to climb out of the hole someone else had. Thrown me into Rose caught me one night, hunched over the laptop, squinting at a spreadsheet tutorial. She stood in the doorway, coffee mug in hand, watching me for a long moment before speaking. "What are you studying so hard for?" I looked up, startled. I hadn't heard her come in. "Business finance," I said, waiting for her to laugh, to tell me to focus on something more practical. Instead, she nodded once. "Smart, plenty of people around here could use help with that. Most can't afford those fancy consultants from the city." That conversation sparked something 3 days later. She brought home a flyer from the community college 30 miles away. "They do scholarships," she said, sliding it across the table, "and GED programs." When I stared at her confused, she sighed. "You think I don't know you're running from something? Nobody ends up behind a diner dumpster because life's going great, kid." I got my GED 3 months later, started community college courses online before the year was out. I still worked at the diner, but Rose adjusted my hours so I could study. She never praised me, never made a big deal out of my small victories, but sometimes I'd find textbooks on my bed, secondhand with coffee stains and highlighted passages from previous owners. But exactly what I needed for my next class. I started helping local businesses with their books. Nothing official, just spreadsheets and basic accounting for cash. The ranch supply store, the small bakery, the mechanic, who always overtipped Rose at breakfast. They paid me what they could, sometimes in money, sometimes in trade, a new pair of work boots, a month's worth of bread, a oil change for Rose's ancient Toyota. I saved every dollar, hid it in an old coffee can, at the back of my closet, not spending, not touching, just watching it grow. By 19, I had enough for a used car. Not pretty but reliable by 20. I had my associate's degree and a job offer from the local credit union. By 22, I was their youngest loan officer, processing applications for the same people whose diners I'd once bussed tables at, who'd watched me grow up, never knowing where I'd come from, only seeing where I was going. Rose never took credit, never asked for recognition. But one night over dinner, nothing fancy, just meatloaf and potatoes, she looked at me and said, "Your mother would be proud." I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. "You knew my mother?" Rose shook her head. "No, but I know you, and no one survives what you survived without coming from someone strong." I got the job at Western Regional Bank when I was 23. They were expanding, opening branches in smaller towns, looking for local talent people who understood rural communities and their needs. I wore a blazer to the interview. The first one I'd ever owned, practiced my handshake in the mirror. The night before, spoke clearly about community investment microlending programs for small businesses. I didn't tell them about the truck stop, didn't mention the dumpster or the $20. I just showed them who I was now, not who I'd been forced to become. The promotion to director came faster than anyone expected, especially me, just before my 24th birthday, the youngest branch director in the bank's history. The local paper did a small write-up. Local success story takes banking leadership role. Nothing flashy. Nothing that would travel beyond county lines, just enough for people to notice. just enough for word to spread, was reviewing loan applications on a Tuesday morning coffee, cooling beside my keyboard when Sarah, my assistant, knocked on the door. "You're 10 o'clock is here, the refinance consultation." I nodded, not looking up from my screen. "Give me 2 minutes, then send them in." I heard the door close, continued reading, making notes on the file in front of me. I didn't look up when the door opened again. Didn't see them until they were sitting across from me. "We're here about the refinance application," a man's voice said, familiar in a way that made my skin go cold. I raised my eyes slowly, carefully making sure my face showed nothing, my hands steady on the desk. Dan sat across from me, hair grayer than I remembered, face more lined beside him, a woman I didn't recognize. Probably wife number 3. Mom had been number 2. Neither of them recognized me. Why would they? The girl they'd abandoned had been thin, scared eyes always down. Now I sat behind a mahogany desk name plaque reading Director of Community Lending, haircut, shoulder-length, professional posture. Perfecti looked down at their file, took a slow breath. Their small contracting business was underwater 3 months. Behind on their commercial mortgage equipment, about to be repossessed. They needed this refinance, desperately needed my signature, my approval, my mercy. "So," I said, voice neutral, professional, "tell me why the bank should take a risk on your business." Dan leaned forward, eager, desperate. "We've had a rough couple of years, but things are turning around. We just need breathing room. Just need someone to believe in us." I nodded, made a note on their file. "Did you bring the additional documentation?" I requested. "The profit and loss statements?" The woman nodded quickly, pulled papers from a folder. "Right here, we've included everything." I took the papers, reviewed them slowly, deliberately, making them wait, making them squirm. Just a little. The numbers weren't good. They weren't terrible either. Just a business on the edge, the kind that could go either way, depending on who decided to help them. "You look familiar," Dan said suddenly, studying my face. "Have we met before?" I looked up, met his eyes directly. "Yes, we have. You left me at the Flying J off Highway 15 8 years ago with $20 and my birth certificate." The color drained from his face. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound coming out. The woman beside him looked confused. "Dan, what's she talking about?" He couldn't answer, couldn't speak, just stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. In some ways he was. I leaned back in my chair, let the silence stretch between us. "You said I was a burden. You said I was old enough to figure it out." My voice stayed calm, professional. No emotion, no tears. "I did figure it out. Maya," he finally whispered. I never thought you'd end up here." I finished for him. "In a position to decide whether your business survives?" I tapped my pen against their folder. Funny how life works, isn't it? The woman was looking between us, her face showing the slow dawning of understanding. "Dan, what did you do?" I stood up, gathered their papers into a neat stack. "Your application is denied." Dan's face crumpled. "Please, Maya, we'll lose everything, the house, the business, everything." For a second, just a second, I felt a flicker of satisfaction, the kind I'd imagined for years in late-night fantasies of revenge, but it faded quickly, replaced by something else. Something that surprised me. Something that felt like freedom. "I'm not denying it because of our history," I said, voice softer. "I'm denying it because it's a bad investment. Your business model is outdated. Your expenses are too high and you've defaulted on 2 previous loans. You're a risk no bank would take." I handed them a different folder, one I'd prepared earlier. "This is a referral to our small business restructuring program, 3 months of consultations that may help you qualify for a different type of assistance if you're willing to make significant changes." Dan stared at the folder, not taking it. The woman reached out instead, her hands shaking slightly. "Thank you," she said quietly, then to Dan. We should go. He stood slowly, aged somehow in the last 10 minutes. Maya, This meeting is over, I said, turning back to my computer. The receptionist will see you out. After they left, I sat in my office, hands trembling slightly. I didn't cry, didn't feel the need to. Instead, I called Rose. They came in today, I said when she answered, for a loan. Rose was quiet for a moment. You okay? Not are you sad? Not are. You angry, just are you okay? That had always been her way, cutting straight to what mattered. Yeah, I said, realizing it was true. I really am. That night, I drove to the edge of town, parked at the overlook, where you could see the whole valley, the mountains rising in the distance, lights blinking on as dusk settled. I thought about the girl at the truck stop, how scared she'd been, how alone, how certain that her life was over before it had really begun. I wished I could tell her what was coming. Not just the success, not just the office and the nameplate, but the peace. The quiet, steady knowledge that she was enough, that she had always been enough. 3 months later, I started a program at the bank. Small personal loans for teens, aging out of foster care microfinancing for first apartments, security deposits, used cars for first jobs. No cosigners required, just a solid plan and regular meetings with financial counselors. I called it the Truck Stop Fund. No one got the reference except Rose, who just smiled and said, "Not bad for a dishwasher." I never heard from Dan again. Never looked him up online. Never wondered what happened to his business, his house, his life. The truth is, once I saw him sitting across from my desk, small and desperate and ordinary, I realized something important. He'd never been the villain of my story. He'd just been a chapter, an unpleasant one, but still just a chapter. Last week, a girl came into the bank. 17, struggling, obviously homeless, though trying hard not to look. She asked about student accounts, whether she could open one without a permanent address, without a parent's signature. I took her into my office, made her tea, listened as her story spilled out. Not so different from mine. Not so different from thousands of others. I don't have anyone, she said finally, eyes on the floor. No one who cares what happens to me. I handed her my card. Not the bank one, the personal one with Rose's diner address on it. Go here, I said. Ask for Rose, tell her Maya sent you. The girl looked confused, suspicious. Why would she help me? I smiled, thinking about dish soap and secondhand textbooks about toothbrushes still in packages and coffee waiting in the morning. Because 8 years ago I was sitting where you are now, and someone decided I was worth helping. Not because I deserved it. Not because I'd earned it, but because sometimes people just need a door held open so they can walk through it themselves. As she left, clutching my card like it might dissolve, I thought about choices, about how we become who we are sometimes because of what happens to us, but more often because of what we decide to do about it. I thought about truck stops and bank. Offices about $20 and million-dollar loan portfolios. The girl who was abandoned didn't disappear, didn't die. She grew stronger, learned to build, found her own way home. Not to a place, but to herself. Brick by brick, day by day, choice by choice, until she became someone who could hold doors open for others. If you think this story is wild so far, just wait until you hear what happened when that same girl from the truck stop became the youngest regional director in banking history. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and let's dive into this journey of abandonment, survival, and the comeback that changed not just one life, but dozens more.